Good morning. All right, today we're going to read out of the first and second books of Adam and Eve, also known as the conflict with Satan. It's Old Testament Apocrypha. This one was translated by Solomon Caesar Milan. So I'm just going to wait for some people to show up here. Send out some notices. On the third day, God planted the garden in the east of the earth on the border of the world eastward, beyond which, towards the sun rising, one finds nothing but water that encompasses the whole world and reaches to the borders of heaven. And to the north of the garden there is a sea of water, clear and pure to the taste, unlike anything else, so that through the clearness thereof one may look into the depths of the earth. And when a man washes himself in it, he becomes clean of the cleanness thereof, and white of its whiteness, even if he were dark. Interesting. Read that one again. And when a man washes himself in it, he becomes clean of the cleanness thereof, and white of its whiteness, even if he were dark. And God created that sea of his own good pleasure, and he knew what he would come of the man he would make, so that after he had left the garden, on account of his transgression, men should be born in the earth. After he had left the garden, on account of his transgression, men should be born in the earth. Among them are the righteous ones who will die, whose souls God would raise at the last day, when all of them will return to their flesh, bathe in the water of that sea, and repent of their sins. Hey, good morning, Rosie. Have a blessed day, my friend. I'm so glad I caught your comment. I'm glad I looked up. All right, where was I? But when God made Adam go out of the garden, he did not place him on the border of it northward. This was so that he and Eve would not be able to go near to the sea of water. They could wash themselves in it, be cleansed from their sins, erase the transgression they had committed, and be no longer reminded of it through their punishment. Interesting. Let's go ahead and read that one again. Love you too, sister. But when God made Adam go out of the garden, he did not place him on the border of it northward. This was so that he and Eve would not be able to go near the sea of water where they could wash themselves in it, be cleansed from their sins, erase the transgression they had committed, and be no longer reminded of it in the thought of their punishment. Interesting. As to the southern side of the garden, God did not want Adam to live there either, because when the wind blew from the north, it would bring him, on that southern side, the delicious smell of the trees of the garden. Wherefore God did not put Adam there. This was so that he would not be able to smell the sweet smell of those trees, forget his transgression, excuse me, and find consolation for what he had done by taking delight in the smell of the trees, and yet not be cleansed from his transgression. Again, also because God is merciful and of great pity, and governs all things in a way that he alone knows, he made our father Adam live in the western border of the garden, because on that side the earth is very broad. Now I'm going to go ahead and re-upload this to YouTube, so go follow that now. It's just my name, Missy Bemis. And I want you to, if you happen to re-listen to this, I'm probably just going to do the first chapter here today. Look up the difference in the meanings of east, west, north, and south, and what those mean scripturally. So let me go ahead and give you this one more time. Wherefore God did not put Adam there. This was so that he would not be able to smell the sweet smell of those trees, forget his transgression, and find consolation for what he had done by taking delight in the smell of the trees, not be yet cleansed from his transgression. Again, also, because God is merciful and of great pity, and governs all things in a way that he alone knows, he made our father Adam live in the western border of the garden. So go look into the significance of that. And God commanded him to live there in the cave in a rock, the cave of treasures below the garden. That also has a lot of significance. I want you to go and look into the cave of treasures below the garden. Oh, we've got time. That was chapter 1. Let's go ahead and do chapter 2. Adam and Eve faint when they leave the garden, God sends his word to encourage them. This is something that I have found. Now, I've read this before. If you haven't read it yet, again, we're in the first and second books of Adam and Eve, the conflict with Satan. It's only 100 pages. I think it was under $10 on Amazon. I love this interpretation here. And so many times Adam and Eve faint. They fall down. They faint and fall down. And actually, throughout this book, they unalive themselves like several times. They just can't handle being human. And it's very interesting. So go pick up this book. Otherwise, I do plan on, I have no schedule, but I do plan on coming in and reading these chapters and then uploading them and discussing them. All right, chapter 2, Adam and Eve faint when they leave the garden. God sends his word to encourage them. But when our father Adam and Eve went out of the garden, they walked the ground on their feet, not knowing they were walking. And when they came to the opening of the gate of the garden and saw the broad earth spread before them, covered with stones large and small, and with sand, they feared and trembled and fell on their faces from the fear that came over them. And they were as dead. They were as dead. Okay? Because whereas until this time they had been in the garden land, beautifully planted with all manner of trees, they now saw themselves in a strange land which they knew not and had never seen. And because when they were in the garden they were filled with the grace of a bright nature, and they had not hearts turned toward earthly things. Therefore God had pity on them. And when he saw them fallen before the gate of the garden, he sent his word to our father, Adam and Eve, and raised them from their fallen state. Listen to this again. Are you ready? I'll do 4 and 5. And because when they were in the garden, they were filled with the grace of a bright nature, and they had not hearts turned toward earthly things. Therefore God had pity on them, and when he saw them fallen before the gate of the garden, he sent his word to our father Adam and Eve, and raised them from their falling state. Good morning, Mike. Happy Friday. We are reading this morning the first and second books of Adam and Eve, also known as the conflict with Satan. It's only 100 pages. It's such a good read. Excuse me for a moment while I have some of my coffee. Ooh, that is now cold. It's a little chilly out here this morning. Chapter 3, concerning the promise of the great 5.5 days. God said to Adam, I have ordained on this earth days and years, and you and your descendants shall live and walk in them until the days and years are fulfilled, when I shall send the word that created you, and against which you have transgressed, the word that made you come out of the garden, and that raised you when you were fallen. Interesting. I want you to think about that. The word that made you come out of the garden, and that raised you when you were fallen. Yes, the word that will again save you when the 5.5 days are fulfilled. But when Adam heard these words from God, and of the great 5.5 days, he did not understand the meaning of them. For Adam was thinking there would be only 5.5 days for him until the end of the world. And Adam cried and prayed to God and explained it to him. And prayed to God to explain it to him. Then God, in his mercy for Adam, who was made after his own image and likeness, explained to him that these were the 5,500 years, and how one would then come and save him and his descendants. 5,500 years, the 5.5 days. But before that, God had made his covenant with our father Adam in the same terms before he came out of the garden, when he was by the tree where Eve took of the fruit and gave it to him to eat. Because when our father Adam came out of the garden, he passed by that tree and saw how God had changed the appearance of it into another form and how it shriveled. And as Adam went to it he feared, trembled, and fell down. But God in his mercy lifted him up and then made this covenant with him. And again, when Adam was by the gate and saw the cherub with a sword of flashing fire in his hand, And the cherub grew angry and frowned at him. Both Adam and Eve became so afraid of him and thought he meant to put them to death. So they fell on their faces, trembled with. But he had pity on them and showed them mercy, and turning from them went up to heaven and prayed to the Lord and said, Lord, you sent me to watch at the gate of the garden with a sword of fire. But when your servants Adam and Eve saw me, they fell on their faces and were as dead. Oh, my Lord, what shall we do with your servants? I want you to consider that you have a team and tribe of angels that watch over you constantly. It's in Psalm 91:11. Oh, well, thanks, Mike. I don't think I'm gonna maybe. Hi, there I am. Now I've lost my train of thought. Thank you, sir. That's what I get, Mike. I need more coffee and less ADHD. Oh, you're angels. So, and I love that this is just touched on in here as well. Because the angel goes up to the Lord and is like, "What? They fell. They're what? What do you have me do here? Your servants can't even handle me." Okay. Then God had pity on them and showed them mercy and sent his angel to keep the garden. And the word of the Lord came to Adam and Eve and raised them up. And the Lord said to Adam, I told you that at the end of the 5.5 days, I will send my word and save you. So at the end of the 5,500 years, he's going to send the word. Strengthen your heart, therefore, and stay in the cave of treasures of which I have before spoken to you. And when Adam heard this word from God, he was comforted with that which God had told him, for he had told him how he would save him. All right, let's take a look. Chapter 4, and then got to go pack lunches and get children ready and all that fun stuff. But so chapter 4 is called Adam Mourns Over the Changed Conditions. Adam and Eve enter the Cave of Treasures. Yep, you've got it. You've got it, Rosie. Cave of Treasures. But Adam and Eve cried for having come out of the garden, their first home. And indeed, when Adam looked at his flesh that was altered, he cried bitterly, he and Eve, over what they had done. And they walked and went gently down to the Cave of Treasures. And as they came to it, Adam cried over himself and said to Eve, Look at this cave that is to be our prison in this world and a place of punishment. What is it compared with the garden? What is its narrowness compared with the space of the other? What is this rock by the side of those groves? What is this cavern compared with the light of the garden? What is this overhanging ledge of rock to shelter us compared with the mercy of the Lord that overshadowed us? What is the soil of this cave compared with the garden land? This earth strewed with stones and that planted with the delicious fruit trees. And to Eve, look at your eyes, and beheld the angels praising in heaven, and they too without ceasing. But now we do not see as did. Our eyes have become as flesh. They cannot see like they used to see us before. Adam said again to Eve, What is our body today compared to what it was in former days when we lived in the garden? After this, Adam did not want to enter the cave under the overhanging rock, nor would he ever want to enter it. But he bowed to God's orders and said to himself, Unless I enter the cave, I shall again be a transgressor. And I want you to go ahead and meditate on that one line right there. Unless I enter the cave, which he now saw as a prison, this cave of treasures, I shall again be a transgressor. So, what do you guys think about this? Is this something that I should do more regularly? You like this reading out of here? Maybe Mike, I'll turn the camera around. I didn't feel like it. I didn't feel like it today. Why can't I share this with my friends? I guess I already did. I like seeing you guys talking to each other in the comments. No, the name of the book, Rosie, is called The First and Second Books of Adam and Eve, The Conflict with Satan. Old Testament Apocrypha. This particular one, I think there might actually be some other versions, but this particular one is translated by Solomon Caesar Milan. Pan the camera. Here, let me see if I can get you off my stand here. Show you my property. It's garbage day. Front porch. Sunshine. It's a beautiful day today. Thank you, Rosie. Yeah, it is Apocrypha. It's not, it's not canon work, but the community. Talk soon.